literally anything that you want comes on the other side of change, and change is always hard, and we don't want to do hard things. So when I boil that down as much as I can and keep saying like, how can I help people? The answer I came to is we have to make it easier. Most people try, they just say like, well, it's going to be hard, so you just got to willpower, you just got to use motivation. And it's like, if you're trying to do hard things all the time, eventually your motivation runs out. Eventually your willpower runs out. You can only white knuckle your way through things so long.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Talk2Rami show. This is Rami, your host. Today I'm so excited because I have Paul Levitin here with me, and we're going to talk about him and we're going to talk about change. And I'm so happy you're here, man.
Well, Rami, thank you for having me. I'm super happy to be here as well. I'm super excited about this conversation.
When we got to know each other the other, day at that event, I was so interested and I start talking to you about the change, and you are the host, actually the podcast of
Change Made Easy.
Change Made Easy.
Yeah.
Is that really true? Change Made Easy?
Well, that's the concept. That's my goal. What inspired me to make the podcast and everything I do is that no, change isn't easy. Change is inherently hard.
It's hard.
Right? And then we know that. But what I found in over 10 years of being a coach and helping people change, because my whole career has been around helping people change in various ways, is that that's the whole struggle, is that it's hard. And as humans, we tend not to want to do hard things. And that right there is the giant conflict. So whether it's losing weight, eating healthy, building a business, becoming an entrepreneur, having a better relationship with your kids, having a better relationship with your partner, literally anything that you want comes on the other side of change, and change is always hard, and we don't want to do hard things. So when I boil that down as much as I can and keep saying like, how can I help people? The answer I came to is we have to make it easier. Most people try, they just say like, well, it's going to be hard, so you just got to willpower, you just got to use motivation. And it's like, if you're trying to do hard things all the time, eventually your motivation runs out. Eventually your willpower runs out. You can only white knuckle your way through things so long. So it's like, if we can't go the hard route and just keep banging our head against it forever, the only other thing that makes any sense to me is to make it a little bit easier. So my goal with everyone I talk to, with every podcast I do, with everything that I do, is to just help make people make their life a little bit easier so that they can find the happiness, the health, the wealth, whatever it is that they're looking for that comes at the other end of the journey, so to speak.
I am sure that you yourself, you went through something in your life, then you said that change made easy. What did you went through? What is your story that you said, okay, I went through it, I experienced it, now I want to tell everybody about change?
Yeah, so for me, it's a combination of both my personal and professional life that kind of all came together to teach me this, because I started as a personal trainer. So I worked at a gym. Yeah. So I worked right out of college. I got a job as a personal trainer in a gym in Brooklyn, New York, where I was living at the time. And this was only just pure happenstance, coincidence. I graduated after the 2008 financial crisis. There weren't a lot of jobs. I graduated with a business degree and there weren't a lot of jobs. And I was just looking for something to do. And I started to learn about health and fitness because I was like, at least if I'm going to be broke and unemployed, I'll look good while I'm doing it. So I started to work out a lot. And then when I started learning about fitness, I was like, well, maybe I could do this for a job. And I got a job as a personal trainer only with the idea of like, I'll do this until I can get a job with my degree. Because I just finished my college with 2 degrees. And I was like, these have to do something, like my business degree.
What did you study?
So I have a degree in business administration and a degree in communications and marketing. So I'm like, okay, like right now isn't the time. So I'm going to just work as a personal trainer until I get my job on Wall Street or in wherever the thing that I'm supposed to do. And just, personal training was just supposed to be a thing, an in the meantime thing. But what happened was I started to do it. In the beginning, I was just, going through the motions, but there was a point where I started to actually help people, and I started to see people change and like feel better, healthier, not just lose weight, right? When you're young, you think it's all about just helping people have bigger muscles and lose 20 pounds. But when I started helping people and I would have clients tell me about how their life was changing because of the work that we were doing, that's when it clicked to me where I'm like, oh, okay, this is bigger than just how you look. This is bigger than just, again, looking good on the beach or something like that. So that's when I got passionate about fitness. And I was like, okay, like I can really help people like this. And I started to really dive into it. And in this time, I was also, maturing as a person at that time. Again, my life was just going out, partying, drinking. I was working, but just enough to go out and do the things that a young single guy in New York City does at the time, which is party until, 3-4 o'clock in the morning, wake up the next day and do it all over again. And I started to see both of these things at the same time. Like in my professional career, I was helping people through health and fitness. And then in my own personal life, I was living a very different life where I was saying one thing, but living a different way, where I was eating like crap and drinking and just wasn't being the person that I was promoting to other people and that was until my nephew was born. So my first nephew was born. I was 28. He's 7 now. So this is 7-8 years ago. And it just felt, I don't have any kids, but like I felt that thing of what I would assume is like a small fraction of what I assume a parent feels when they hold their kid for the first time. When I held my nephew for the first time, it was just like, oh, I have to do better. Like there's something more now in this world beyond just me. It's not just about me having fun and drinking and partying and talking to girls and all of this stuff. Like there's, like what I do is going to affect him and it's going to have consequences. So, and I had that kind of inflection point. I was fortunate that I had the background in health and fitness and mindset and all of the things that I had been studying to teach other people, but I wasn't really applying to myself up until that point. But I still had that information. Like I was still very in that world of like personal growth. I just wasn't really practicing what I preached. But around that time, I decided to make a shift in my own life, which was to stop drinking, to stop partying, and to start taking all of that time that I was investing, not really investing because nothing good was coming out of it, but investing in the nightlife, in the different negative habits that I was doing and turn them into positive habits. And so I saw what the difference was. It's like I've lived both sides of it. Like I know what it is to just be going down a dark path where my whole life was built around drugs and drinking and sex. And then I know what it is to get out of that and how hard that can be. And then I know what it feels like to live a more positive life. And I think that that's a big part of like the change that I made is that I've seen both. And like now it's like they say like leaving the matrix. It's like I can never go back because it's like I don't want that anymore. Like I know what it is to live a healthy life, to feel good, to be proud of the things that I'm doing. And that's just to me the most meaningful thing. And that's what I've become passionate about, teaching others, helping others, showing to others. It came from that journey of like, okay, like I wasn't doing the right thing and I've done it now. And there's a better way that we can all live that is better for us as individuals and for us as a society. A rising tide raises all ships. A better me is a better you is a better me, and we can all help each other. And that's what I'm super passionate about.
You talk about it, so easy, I know change is hard. The listeners, the viewer, the watching or listening, they all know the change is hard, but always is the first step, that the hardest one, if you want to change, what is the hardest step that you have seen through your people, because you coach, you talk to people, and you have a great podcast. What is the hardest? What is the point that people get really stuck? I don't really want to change, but I don't really want to change, but, they keep saying that, but.
Right.
What is that?
Yeah, so it's a few different places, right? Like if you think about change as a journey, right? It's a cliche, but it is a journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? We have all these cliches, but they're all true. And the point is that it takes a long time. And I think that there's 3 places logically that people get stuck. It's beginning, middle, and end.
Wow.
Right? And those are different things. So some people get stuck at the beginning, right? This is like the first step is the hardest, right? We've heard that before. So that's either you don't know what to do, you don't know how to get started, or you're too intimidated to get started. So these are the people who have been thinking about doing the thing forever. The people who have been thinking about starting, the people who always have a plan but never put it into action. And they're just too afraid or too stuck to get that initial momentum. Because once we have some momentum, it feeds into itself. It's like the person who is losing weight, so they feel motivated by the weight loss that they've already seen to stay on the diet. But before they've lost that initial weight, they don't have that motivation or that momentum to push them forward. So they stay stuck before it starts. And then there's people who fizzle out before the end, right? So like the people who they get almost all the way there. It's that, if you've ever seen that meme, it's like a picture of like two guys and they're like digging, and one of them is like right in front of a big gem. Yes, exactly. And the other guy is turning around right before the end. So some people,
they give up too soon.
They think that they think that it's going. They don't realize how close they are to the actual finish line. But the one that I see the most is what I call the middle, what I call the long middle. So the long middle is when you are so far into it that you can't see the beginning, but you're still too far away to see the end. So if you think about it as you're running a marathon, when you're at the starting line, there's a lot of excitement there, right? Like everyone's getting excited, people are cheering, and like everyone's getting ready to go. They're stretching, they're ready to go. The gunshot goes off. You get to the end of the marathon and you can see the finish line. Even if you were about to collapse, you would get a last little boost of energy where you're like, I can finish. It's right there.
I experienced that. You're absolutely right.
But at mile 13, when there's 13 miles behind you and all you look back and exactly, you look back and all you can see is road. You look forward and all you can see is road. It's all the same. It's all starting to blend together. That's what I call the long middle. And that's where people really give up because it just feels so demotivating. It feels like I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to finish. What's the point of all of this? And people just fizzle out. And this is where things like mindset come in, because in that point, that's where it really is you versus you. That's where it is like there is nothing. You can't make it be. If you're at mile 13 and you're running a marathon, you have 13 miles to go. No amount of anything is going to make it shorter. The only thing that's going to finish that race for you is you. But the thing that stops you from finishing the race is your mental game, is the person who's like, oh, this is too far. I'm so tired.
What we tell ourselves.
Our self-talk. Things like, this isn't fair. This should have happened faster. The shoulds. This should have been easier. I should have been here by now. We get all of these feelings about the way things are supposed to go. And anytime we have a thought about the way things should go and it doesn't match up with reality, those things are automatically in conflict. Right? So it's like, I started my business 2 years ago. I should have had this much success by now. Rami has been doing his business for this long. He's this successful. I should be this successful because I've been doing it as long as him. But those things don't match up. And we get into our own head about how fair it is, what's going on. And that's what causes us to give up. The reality is you will always get the result if you don't stop. That's just the long and short of it is. Whether it's a diet, whether it's a business plan, whether it's exercise, whether it's therapy, like eventually you get the thing. Whatever the goal is, it will come. The question is, do you stop doing it before you get to that result? And that's what most people do. Most people get frustrated, they get tired, they get bored, they get demotivated, a million other things that will happen that cause them to stop before they actually get the result. So that's what I call the long middle, because it's this demotivating place where you're just like, you feel like you're just slogging through. You're in the middle of the ocean and in any direction, all you see is more water. And it just feels like you're just like, I'm lost at sea. But the point is, if you keep going, you will reach your destination eventually.
When you get that middle, I'm this is great how you explain that, because we all is stuck. I think it's not 90%, but close to that, in that middle road. I've been there. And I was so close to winning my game, whatever it was that the business and anything, and I gave up. And then 2 days later, it happened and I lost it.
Right.
Basically, I could not push myself through that. It's hard. It's exhausting. Like, you get so many punches in the face, and you said, I can stand up. And then, bam, you're done. What is the tools or system or is a mindset? Right. I totally get it, but is it like a positive talks? Is it like, what is it that can fuel that and just like a rocket and get you go through that?
Well, so the first thing is to understand that like that's exactly the truth, right? So people say, well, like, oh, it just feels so hard. No, that's the truth. It is like that. Again, if you're using the marathon analogy, the finish line and the starting line are 1% of the journey. The entire rest of the thing is the race.
Yeah.
So we get so excited about the beginning and the end when most of it is the middle. So that long middle, that part that you just said, where it's like, it's so frustrating, it's so hard, that is 99% of any journey. Again, whether it's the entrepreneur, everyone wants to talk about the entrepreneur who sells his business, right? Who sells the business or IPOs or does whatever. It was like, that's one speck in the actual thing that we're doing, where the whole other thing, the sleeping on couches, the taking out loans, the late nights, the almost failing, the this, that, the other thing, like that just gets all swept into the journey. Like we just throw that all into one bucket of like what it is. So my first thing that I tell people is that you have to realize that this is the truth, right? We have to start to separate facts from feelings. A lot of times it's like, again, it feels like it should be like this. It feels like I've been doing so much work. It feels like this, but there's only what is, and then there's feelings. And what is, yes, you're right. When you are out in the middle of the ocean and you have there's nothing around you, there's no support, it is hard. That's true. And that's okay. You can do hard things. Like we are allowed to struggle. We are allowed to be frustrated. We're allowed to say like, this is harder than I thought it was and taking longer than I thought it was going to. Again, that's all okay as long as you don't quit. So when I talk about like, what are the tactics and things like that, this is where working with a coach or a therapist or journaling or any of these things get you to work through these emotional times and come back to the reality and logic. Because most of the time when we want to give up, when we quit, again, failure, I use air quotes a lot because there's no such thing as failure. There's only giving up and not trying again. Failure, little f failure, is good. That's we learn from failure. We struggle. Capital F failure, true failure, only means you stop trying. The only way to fail is if you stop trying. Any other failure is just a bump on the road. You learn, you iterate, you keep going. So the only time when we fail, truly, when we stop, is when we let our emotional feeling brain take charge instead of our logical brain. Because logically, I can sit here and talk to you and say, hey, you know that there are going to be times when it sucks. There are going to be times when it's hard. There are going to be times when you feel lost, when you feel frustrated, and all of that is part of the process. And you go, yes, I understand that. If it were easy, everyone would do it. Of course, those times are going to come. Logically, when we're having a conversation like this. But in those moments, when it's happening, all that logic goes out the window, and your emotional brain, your whatever you want to call it, the lizard brain, the monkey mind, whatever it is, 5 alarms going off. This is it. You've messed up for the last time. You've spent all of your money. You tried something that isn't going to work. You've made a fool of yourself. This is where it all ends, and your emotional brain gets in your way, and that's what causes you to quit. So we have to just come back to, there are realities that we cannot change. Very few things are realities. How much money is in my bank account is a reality. Then the feeling I have around that, I'll never be able to make more. If I lose this money, it's all for nothing. That no more money is going to come after this, whatever thing. These are all feelings that we put on top of that. So if we can start to separate those facts from those feelings, now we can start to make decisions that are actually in our own best interest.
Basically, I love what you said about the emotions. I think most of this stuff happens when your emotion takes over.
Correct.
Like even in the battlefield, most of the people die when their emotions takes over and they get like reading the loved one letter or anything else, and they kind of get weak. And I think in the life and business it's like that too, as you just described, when the emotion kicks in. And sometimes it's negative emotions and say, no, you can't do it. It's like two people sitting on your shoulder. One says go, one says don't go. It's really hard to fight that. Like, what do you think or what you suggest people do? Like, I go through that sometimes. You go through that, to just kick that person and say, no, I'm not listening to you. I just want to keep going because I know it's going to work. That battle is not easy. You know that, but that's for a lot of people that they go through drug addiction. They can't give up. I think that emotions, that part of your brain takes over. And then when we can get control of that part, I think everything changes.
Well, yeah, that is exactly what we're fighting for all the time. And it's not to say that emotions are bad, right? Emotions are part of the human experience, right? It's just what is controlling us. That's the difference. We can't let emotion be the thing that dictates all of our decisions. And the easiest way that I can tell people to start to take back control of this, because this is what it's all about, is control. Something I say a lot in my podcast is, are you in the driver's seat or are you in the passenger seat? Right? Is life happening to you or are you happening to life? Because if you make a conscious decision, there's no wrong decision. Meaning if someone will say, like, again, I use dieting as an analogy all the time, just because not because it's about dieting, but just I think it's something that people can relate to. But if someone eats a cookie or a cake or an ice cream, that's not inherently good or bad. When it becomes bad in my eyes is when someone says, like, oh, I didn't want to do that, but I did it anyway. It's like, well, that to me is bad, because now you're doing something outside of your own control. Whereas if you said, I went out with my daughter, we did daddy-daughter weekend this weekend, and she really wanted ice cream, so we got it, and we sat in the park, and we really enjoyed it, and I had a great time. It's like, that sounds like amazing to me.
And change the whole perspective.
Right. It's the same ice cream.
Yes.
But it's the way with which you're doing it. So how do we get out of that emotional place where we're reacting, and how do we get to a place of being proactive where we're making decisions? And that just comes through literal space and time. So the tool that I give people is just called the pause, right? The longer the pause between when I get an impulse to do something and the time that I take the action, the more chances that I have of making a logical decision. Because that's how your brain works, right? All of the emotional decisions that we make, they come from a place of safety when your brain is like, we need to go now, right? It's like run, there's a tiger coming, you need to run. There's no time to think in those moments. Okay. And that's where all of this stuff is built into us evolutionarily. But now we don't live in that world anymore. And when you get an email from someone and you just want to fire off a nasty response immediately, that's your emotional safety brain. Usually, if you wait 48 hours or 24 hours, the email that you send is not going to be the same email that you would have sent in that moment. Similarly, when you eat poorly, like when you come home and you're like, oh, I can't believe I ate all that. I ate all that dessert. I ate all this. I'm like, my stomach hurts. I'm so like, oh, I can't believe I did that. If you would have made a plan today for what you're going to eat tomorrow, you're never going to plan to eat so much that it makes you sick. So the more time you can put in between what you're trying to do and the actual action, the more chances you have of letting your logical brain check back in, tell your emotional brain, that's okay. Like you said, there's the two guys on the shoulder. The emotional brain's like, go now, I got to do that. You got to do the thing. And your logical brain will tell you the right answer. Almost always we know what to do. It just is slower than your emotional brain. So it takes a little bit of time. And that's why hindsight is 20/20, right? That's why everyone knows what to do after the fact, or that's why you're great at giving advice to your friend, to your family, right? Everyone has the best advice when your best friend says, oh my God, I just don't know what to do. You go, oh no, it's simple. Just do this, this, and this. Why? Because you have this space to look at it from a different perspective. One of my favorite sayings is, you can't read the label from inside the jar. Right? When you're too close.
That's so good.
Right. You can't read the label from inside the jar. When you're too close, you can't see. It's like this. It's in your face, right? When you zoom out, you see a whole different perspective and you can see the whole thing. And that's why whenever you give other people better advice than you can give yourself, because to them, you're an outside observer and you're seeing the whole picture. But when I'm in it and it's my thing, I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's like this. But I'm too in it to actually see. So if I can pause, take a step back, give myself a little bit more time for my logical brain to just take a few deep breaths, calm down, and make a decision from a place of not emotion, but actual logic, I start to make much better decisions. Again, whether it's around food, whether it's around exercise, whether it's around business, whether it's about, do I really want to say that to my wife, to my partner, something like that? Like, again, like I might react in emotion in the moment, but 10 minutes later, I'm like, probably not worth an argument. So just giving yourself a little bit of time is the number one easiest way, because we always have that available to us to just slow things down and pause.
You said it in, I was listening to your episode, Explore the Power of Pausing Before Reacting. I really love that. And I would listen to it because I made that mistake. And I'm sure a lot of listeners or viewers, they made it, or they're still making that mistakes, making decisions so quick. And it came back and bite me. And I'm still working on it. Basically, what you're telling me, and I'm going to practice it. I'm start doing it, that don't make a decision. Even simple thing, you get an email. Mm-hmm. You get an email and you get pissed off. And you said, oh, this is not right. They shouldn't say this, or they don't know what you're talking about. If you react so quick, you start typing, you're going to type something that you would definitely regret. Mm-hmm. This happened to me. And now that I get emails like that, I got one this morning. Not that bad, but I had to give him like a solid answer. And I said, okay, I'm going to wait. I'm going to pause it after my, podcast with Paul. I'm going to go back to it and then really grab my coffee and then respond to it. But I totally agree with you. Most of the stuff that we screw is all about reacting so quick. I think it's in everything, don't you think? Like conversation, basic conversation. Before you listen, you speak. Before you listen, you judge. Before you listen, you conclude. This is like, I'm telling everybody, you guys, if you're listening to this, you got to go watch. First of all, sign up for the Change Made Easy podcast, amazing podcast with Paul, and listen to this episode specifically for exploring the power of, just pausing before reacting is amazing. And you experienced that as yourself, you went through life, you did that. But this is so important to pause before reacting, and how we can, it's very hard. That sometimes you're so mad, You're going to say, I want to let him have it. I want to let him have it. How we can just overcome that we said, step back, dude. Step back, just relax. It's hard.
Right. So exactly, right? So going back to the beginning of the conversation, yes. How do we make things easy when it is hard, right? So that's the point. All of this stuff is hard, point blank, right? So we can just this is the thing, right? People will say oh, X, Y, and Z is hard. Everything's hard, right? Literally everything that we do is hard.
Amen.
People will say say something like this, easier said than done. Yeah.
We use that a lot.
Right. Everyone says it, right? Easier said than done. I hate that phrase, right? Easier said than done, because everything is easier said than done. It's easier to talk than it is to act. You can talk, you can describe literally anything easier than you can do it. It's easier said than done. It's no duh. So all of this stuff is inherently challenging, but that's the reason that we need to work on it. So for something like the pause, it is a muscle. So anything that you work on, the more you do it, the better you'll get. This is why things like mindfulness, meditation, and breathing practices are good, right? People have said for years, take a few deep breaths. Take a few deep breaths actually does help. Not because I think anything about the actual breathing, right? If someone yells at you and they say, take 5 deep breaths before you respond. It's not about the whatever that's happening. It's about the amount of time that it takes to do 5 deep breaths. 5 big, slow, deep breaths might take me 10 to 20 seconds. That is long enough for my logical brain to catch up. Where I was about to, if I would have responded in that moment, I would have been out of the gate. Let's go. Just a few deep breaths might be enough for me to go, okay, hold on. Let me think about what I want to say. So similar people will talk about for eating, put your fork down in between bites or drink water in between your meals. It's because all that is doing is slowing you down. So anything that you can do to put up a either literal or theoretical barrier between you and the action will help. So for example, I had a very similar experience with an email that came in a couple days ago, and I literally started responding. And then just to give myself a little bit of separation, instead of responding in the email app, in my Gmail, I went to my notes on my phone. And I wrote out the whole email as a note on my phone, but that way I couldn't just hit send. I had to then look and see and copy and paste it. But in that gave me a second to read it and go, do I really want to be copying and pasting this to this person and actually sending it?
That's the greatest strategy.
Yeah. And I ended up not doing it. And instead I scheduled a call with them. I was like, you know what? After writing all this out, I wrote it out. That got the energy out of me because I said all the things that I wanted to say. That I thought about, I'm like, this seems very combative in this way. I'm the points that I'm making are important, I think, but I feel like if I send it, there's no nuance, there's no tone there. So it can seem like I'm attacking them. So instead, I scheduled a call. I said, hey, can we just hop on a call to talk about this? And this was on Thursday. And the person I was scheduling with said, okay, how about we hop on a call on Monday? So now it went from when I got the email on Wednesday to when we scheduled via email on Thursday to now Monday is when we're actually talking. And when we got on the call on Monday, I was over it at that point. I was like, it's okay. I really don't care anymore. It's I've worked through it in my head, and we talked about my grievances or whatever, but it wasn't even from a place of anger or being upset. It was just from a place of here's how I would have handled this. Here's how I think we could avoid things like this in the future. But it really didn't matter to me. So just giving myself that time and that space, I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to work. I wasn't meditating on it in that time. I wasn't journaling on it. I wasn't doing anything in that time. But just literally the fact that I put days in between when the initial thing happened and when I responded to it, it changed inside of my head. It went from being a 5-alarm fire to being just a thing that happened that I actually didn't even care about. And had I responded in that moment, it could have been a completely different scenario because I was talking to the CEO and the head of the company that I was dealing with. And like, they could have, again, I wasn't trying to be rude, but the way I phrased it, I could definitely read it as it was being rude.
We can sense that, yeah.
So you can use things like that. Again, writing in the notes app. I tell my clients all the time to set timers, literally set a timer, right? You want something? That's fine. Set a timer in your phone, 5 minutes. See at the end of the 5 minutes if you still feel the same way as you did before. You want to send a text, you want to do whatever. I've had clients who've seen a lot of success with things like online shopping addiction, right? Where they're buying too much things. And so what we did was you can add it to your cart, but you can only check out once a week. So now Monday they're add to cart, Tuesday add to cart, instead of just doing, because Amazon would just be like buy now, buy now, buy now. So they add to cart, and then Friday, it's like that's checkout day. You go back and look through the whole cart. And you might go, actually, I don't really even want any of this stuff. I was just in a mood on Monday. Like, I don't want this little ice cube tray or whatever thing I had saw on TV and just added to my cart. So just in doing that, again, not changing anything else about what they're doing, just changing the time that they're doing it in, that space has allowed them to spend hundreds less dollars in a shopping that was quote unquote an addiction, but it wasn't really that they were addicted to shopping. It was really that they were just making decisions in the heat of the moment and not giving themselves any space to think about it. And when they gave themselves that space, they inherently made a better decision anyway.
Basically, you delay the time to react.
Right.
Well, I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit because we talked about change within and how we can do. How about this? Are you agree with this statement? We can't change people.
I mean,
this is the conversation lately. Everybody that I talk to say, oh, you can't change that person. Oh, I can't change my boyfriend. I can't change my wife. You can't change people. Don't try. Don't waste your time. I think we cannot change it, but we can influence them and direct them to a path that eventually is going to be a change. It's hard, but have you ever had that experience, or what is your thoughts on changing others?
Right. Well, the short answer is no, you can't change anyone, which is interesting when my job as a coach is literally to change people, right? People hire me as a fitness coach or as a business coach to help me do the thing, to make me change. But the reality is that you can't change anyone else. And ironically, the harder you try, the more impossible it becomes, because anyone who is a parent will know that when you tell a kid to do something, they want to do the exact opposite thing. And this is human nature. When you say that, this is why when I was a nutrition coach, I don't like things like restrictive diets, like no carbs, because inherently human nature is to do the thing that you're told not to do.
Not to do.
So when you say you can't have carbs, you can do it for 1 week, 6 weeks, 6 months, however, but eventually it's like no pizza, no pizza, no pizza, whole pizza, because I want to eat I just can't keep doing it. So telling someone to change, forcing someone to change is very much the same thing. You're trying to get someone to do something, and that will inherently put up their defenses to where they're going to actually push back and do the opposite thing. So a very specific example, and this is how I learned about this stuff. This is how I was trained. Back in you go back to the 50s, 60s, 1950s, 1960s, someone had an alcohol problem, right? An alcohol abuse and things like that. They would literally put those people in jail. Right. This is before Alcoholics Anonymous, before treatment programs were a thing. Right. They would try to sober them up. They would put them in jail. They would slap them with fines. So they'd say okay, you're a drunk. We'll put you in the lockup for 2 weeks to dry you out or something like that, and tell them next time you're going to be in jail for 3 months or something like that. Right. Punishment, basically using the carrot or the stick. But we see that doesn't work. People were not actually getting sober. It was not changing anyone's actual habits around drinking. Similar to someone who is smoking cigarettes, right? You might have someone in your family who smokes cigarettes, and everyone hates that they smoke cigarettes. Aunt Susie smokes cigarettes, and we tell her all the time she's killing herself. She's going to die. Don't you want to live? Don't you want to live for your kids? Everyone could tell her that. Susie knows when she smokes cigarettes, she's seen the ads. She's not stupid. She knows every time she smokes a cigarette how bad it is for her. And everyone telling her not to do it just pushes her to do it even more. Whereas when you can get someone to actually want to change for themselves, so going back to the alcohol analogy, when AA came around, what AA does, Alcoholics Anonymous, and other more rehab type programs, is they help people change from the inside out, not by telling them what to do, but by giving them the resources and guiding them to make the change if and only if they want to. No one will take you and force you to go to AA. No one can make you stay sober in that regard.
Give them the option.
You give them the options, you give them the resources, and you lead by example. That's the best thing that you can do to try to change someone else. Because all the time people will ask me, especially as a fitness and nutrition coach, I'll have people, guys or girls who I'm working with, how do I get my partner to do this? How do I get my wife to want to diet? Or how do I get my husband to work out with me? My answer is always you don't. You just show up as the highest version of yourself. And through that, you inspire them to want to be better themselves. What you can never do is say, hey, you should be doing this. Again, should. Because there's nothing that should be done. People are going to do what they're going to do. Everyone has their own life path that they're going to go on. So the best thing that you can do is, one, lead by example. Show them what the possibilities are. If you are living with someone and they're eating healthy and they're exercising and their skin is glowing and they're feeling good and they're losing weight and they're looking better, you can't help but want to do that. You can't help but want to join in with them because you're like, well, why would I want to keep getting worse when this person is getting better? Like, I want to be better too. So you lead by example, and you also give them the resources and the ability to do so without forcing it on them. Meaning you give them the whatever it is, you have the books, you have the gym membership, you have the things so that they can make those choices if they want to, but it always has to be their choice. You can never make another person's decision for them. All you can do is, going back to the title, Change Made Easy, make it as easy as possible for them so that when they're ready, they can do it with less friction. And if you can do it with less friction, there's more chance of them actually wanting to do the thing.
I think one of the reasons also people that don't want to change is the perception of others. I have seen that. I don't want people to think about this, but they basically are hiding behind something they have created it themselves. I have friends that went through that. They don't want to change. They go spending so much money to just a perception that I can do that. Then they don't want to change that habit because that perception that they want from others is killing them. It's really killing them. That can be in beauty, that can be in the wealth, and everything else is in life. Oh, he's miserable, but he's not going to change his relationship with his loved one or the wife or a husband, but everybody thinks he's happy because he doesn't want to see that. He wants to keep that curtain. Have you seen that?
Right. Yeah. 100%.
As a coach?
100%. We see that a lot. But that goes to, this is a perfect example of, that's the type of person you can't change. Right. So this is a perfect example of like where you can see it, right? But they can't, right? You can see you're holding yourself back. You're trying to adhere to societal norms. Like it doesn't have to be this way. Just come with me. I can show you the way. Like, it's just like, we know exactly what to do. Just follow these steps, A, B, C, D. That person isn't ready yet. That person has to decide to change on their own. So that's the person where the best you can do is to lead by example. If you do the things that you know to do to be the best, highest version of you, and that person, when they're ready, will come and ask. Because what you can't do is take a person who is so entwined in, again, society. There's reasons for it. Societal norms, the way they were raised, the way their parents were. There's reasons for all of this stuff of the why we are the way that we are. But you can't force your journey of change onto someone else's, right? Everyone is on their own journey of change, and it happens at different times. Some people start when they're 30 or 40. Some people were super lucky and they were into this stuff when they were 18, and now they're 30 and they've accomplished more in life than any. Some people retire from their first career at 65, and that's when they start to meditate and read and do all of these different things. So someone who's 25 can't look at the 45-year-old and go like, oh my gosh, I know what you're supposed to be doing. I know where you're supposed to be. Let me help you get there, because they're on different trajectories and different timelines Eventually they might end up at the same place, because we're all going to the same place. If you're talking about enlightenment and working on yourself and being a better human and being healthy and being happy, it's all kind of coming to the same point. But you can't do it for someone else, and you can't put someone on a different timeline than they're ready to be on. So all you can do is, that's why I go back to, make it as easy as possible for them to get into that with you and lead by example, so that they have more motivation to actually make the change. Because usually if someone is stuck in that world, like you said, it's like they're living this fake life because they want to look good for society or something like that. They want to look good on Instagram. They want to show off for their neighbors, keeping up with the Joneses or whatever it is. Like, they are getting something out of that. They're getting a feeling of status. They're getting some feeling of emotion. There's a reason that they're doing that. So if you want to change that, there has to be something better on the other side of it. So they have to see Rami and go, okay, wait, but Rami is living true to himself, and he created a business, and he's doing all of this stuff. He's not following the rules that everyone else has laid out, but he's happy, and he looks better at his age than I did 10 years ago. And he's doing all of these things that everyone else says is impossible. Well, why can't I do that? But it can never be from a place of being pushed into it. It has to be more of a gravitational pull.
But how this works in the business world, because I was in the corporate, and the culture, I didn't like it. I could not change it. I could not really change that culture. It ended up that I left, and I said, this is not for me, and I left. Don't you think it's with artificial world and environment that we're living in, the power of social media, AI, the relationship, and they're not really pure like you and I were sitting and talking. All this stuff, I think, adds up for us and act as another obstacle that we say, oh, I can't change.
Right.
I don't want to change. That's what I think that, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but the environment that you are in can add or subtract.
100%. Environment is everything. Environment dictates the if you will or won't do something. But now the question is, how much can you control your environment? There's different levels of different. This is where it becomes very nuanced, because you can say, a perfect example. Someone could say, well, this is just, I'm in a Fortune 500 company. Yeah. I'm one of 50,000 employees. I can't change the corporate culture here. Now you have a choice. You can say that, and you can stick with it, and you can grind it out, or you can quit and start your own business, like you just said.
Yeah, I did that. That was the reason that I started my business.
But that's what I'm saying. So some people would say, like, oh, I can't change this, so I'm stuck. And some people will say, I can't change this, so I'm going to leave and play a different game. And either one of those is not a wrong answer. Someone can stay in that world and still grind it out. But what you have to realize is that you do have another option. That's my point, is that people think that it has to be one way. And they're like, well, I could never do that. Like, oh, that Rami did that. He did that, but I could never do that. It's like, well, that's a personal decision. That's a limiting belief that's keeping you where you are. You could maybe figure out a way to, get through your 9 to 5 and not hate it. And then just say, lots of people have a good life like that. That's not to say that everyone needs to be an entrepreneur or everyone needs to choose a certain route, because there's a lot of hardships along with entrepreneurship as well. It's not all sunshine and rainbows like people make it out to be. But the point is that everything comes down to your environment. And no matter what, your environment is shaping who you are. So sometimes you have more control over your environment, and sometimes you have less. If you're in a place with less control over your environment, you have two options: change the environment completely, which is what you did, or you do your best to shape that environment, which is, this is someone who complains about the government but doesn't vote in local elections, right? It's like, absolutely. Voting in local elections isn't going to change the president, but you do what you can do because that's all you can do.
You are nailed it. And we can talk about change all day long, man. I love this conversation because it's a huge thing. People, they don't realize that everything is start with changing ourselves. Not only the mind, is how we react, how we think, how we perceive things in this world right now especially. But what is your advice for people that really want to change something, maybe personal, maybe business? What are your advice for those people that say, oh my God, I listened to Paul. He's right. What they have to do? Write it down, listen, read, ask for the coach like you. Hey, Paul, I need your help.
So, I mean, I do think there's power in having a coach, a therapist, a mentor, someone outside of yourself. Like I said before, you can't read the label from inside the jar. We are social creatures, right? Teamwork makes the dream work. But I actually have a framework that I take people through.
Wow.
That I call, it's called EASIER. So easier, right? Can't make it easier than that. It's an acronym, EASIER. And I take people through this to see, is this change that you're trying to make going to stick? Because as we've kind of touched on, consistency is everything.
Oh, is everything.
Right? So whatever change, or people talk about making a change, but a change doesn't matter unless you're going to stick to it. So again, going a diet for 2 weeks doesn't do anything for you. Doing a business for 6 months doesn't do anything for you. Going to therapy 3 times doesn't do anything for you. You do all of those things for 10 years and you're the happiest person on earth, right? So it's like, what can you do consistently? So a lot of people, I think they mess up by picking goals that aren't actually aligned with their best values, their best version of themselves. And because of that, they don't end up sticking to it. And this is why people give up after a short period of time. So I created this framework to take people through so they can see, is this something that's worth investing my time and my energy into? Is it something that I'm actually going to stick to in the long run? So it's easier. I'll walk you through it super quickly. So easier, E stands for enthusiasm. This is the first place to start. Are you enthusiastic about the thing? And the thing being the goal, but also the action steps. So a lot of people will say, I'm enthusiastic about having a 6-figure business. Yeah, who wouldn't be?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm enthusiastic about losing 50 pounds. Of course you are. Are you enthusiastic about the 6 a.m. mornings and the 10 o'clock nights that gets you to the $100,000 business? Are you enthusiastic about the times when you almost lost everything and had to sleep in your car? Are you enthusiastic about all of those things that take you to getting there? So are you enthusiastic not about losing the weight, but are you enthusiastic about the day-to-day action steps that you have to take to get it? So someone might say, well, I want to lose 20 pounds, so I'm going to do keto, right? I'm going to cut out all carbs. And I would say, well, do you hate carbs? Like, no, I love carbs. Like, well, then you're not enthusiastic about it. You're not going to stick to it. So that's a bad goal for you to set. That's not a habit that you're going to stick to, that you're going to be able to maintain. So I start with enthusiasm. You have to be enthusiastic about the entire process. That's E. A stands for availability. So availability is what's available to you with your current resources and restraints. So a lot of people will go, I want to start a business. Well, how much money do you have? Well, not enough. Okay, well then you don't have the availability to do it. You don't have the resources available to you to make that a reality. I want to go to the gym and work out. I heard you're supposed to go to the gym 5 times a week for an hour. Well, how much time do you have? Well, with my kids and my job, I have two 45-minute blocks on Monday and Wednesday. It's like, okay, well, you're setting yourself up for failure before you've even started by trying to do more than you have with the current resources that you have available. Instead, how can we build a workout that fits into 2 45-minute blocks twice a week so that you can set yourself up for success? So a lot of people start backwards. They start with this big goal and then try to whittle it away to fit it into what they have, and that never works. Instead, you start with what you have. I have $50,000 saved up and that's it. Okay, well then build a business with that. Don't look at what it takes to build $1 million business when you're starting with $50,000.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you have to start with what's available. And again,
what you have.
Right, exactly. You start with what you have and you build from there. Because again, if you do it the opposite, you're setting yourself up for failure from the beginning, and that eventually you're going to run out of that runway and you're going to lose motivation because it's like, oh, well, I can't do it with this stuff anymore. So that's EA. S stands for straightforward. Straightforward is, can you tell me how you're going to get to your end result in simple words? Can you explain how to get from A to B, B to C, all the way to Z? Because complexity is the killer of dreams.
Oh, why?
Right? Most people are just like, I want to do X, Y, and Z. I want to get to this thing, right? We're all talking about results. I don't care about the result. I care about the in-between from where you are to the
marathon.
Result. Exactly. So, okay, right? So marathon example, right? I want to pass the finish line. Okay, but what are you going to do when your calf cramps up on mile 12?
Exactly.
Right? Like that's what I want to know. So if you can't explain that to me, there's no point in starting, because I know that that's going to come up. Right? Like it's not like people are so gassed up on the finish line. I know that there's going to be speed bumps on mile 10, mile 12, mile 17. So if you can't tell me how you're going to get through those, we don't even need to start, because I already know that you're not going to finish. So that's EAS. I stands for imperfect. So a lot of people talk about perfectionism, and perfect isn't real. You can't be perfect, yada, yada. We know that, right? I think that people get that at this point, or I would hope that they do. Perfection isn't real.
Yep.
But I go a step further and I say, you need to be so imperfect that you can get excited about it. Going back to what I said before about capital F failure and little f failure, right? So little f failure are failures that you fail forward, you learn from. So the imperfect action is about leaning into that. I'm looking for places that I can fail, because if I fail, that means I get to learn. And if I learn, that means I get to be better and I don't make that same mistake next time. So the I in imperfect means that you have to be excited about finding those places where you're struggling, where you're messing up, where you're falling off, because all of that is a season of growth. If you go into the gym and you lift weights that you can already lift, your muscles will never grow. If you go into the gym and you only lift 5 pounds weights and you're strong enough to lift 50s, your muscles, you give them no reason to grow. It's all about adaptation. And the same it is with your brain, and the same is with your business. If you have a business and you make $10,000 a month, you might feel great about that. But if you keep doing what you're doing, it's going to stay at that. If you want to grow to $100,000, you're not going to get it by doing the things that got you to making $10,000. So therefore, you have to look for things that push you outside of your capacity. And that means you have to be imperfect. If you're doing everything perfectly, you're not working hard enough to actually move forward. And so you have to be okay with that and know that you are going to fail, you are going to mess up, you are going to stumble, but that's because you're actually pushing yourself to where that you need to go. So you have to be okay with that. So that's EASI. The second E is exponential. Exponential is you need exponential returns on your investment. So a lot of people will go, well, why?
I need it all right now.
Right. Well, but they'll set themselves up so they'll go, you should work out, right? Because working out is good for your body and it's good for your mind. It's like therapy, right? Everyone says that now, right? Again, why isn't everyone working out? That's true. Because it's good for your mind and it's good for your body. That's two. It's hard and it sucks. Those cancel out right away, right? So it's good for your mind. It's good for your body. It's good for your bone. It makes you breathe better. It makes your knees hurt less. It makes you feel more confident. It makes you I need so many positive results from the one input, which is going to the gym, that it outweighs all of the negatives that are going to come with it. Because every hard thing, every change is a hard thing inherently, right? We've said this 100 times since we started talking. Change is hard automatically. So whatever benefit you're getting gets canceled out by the fact that it's hard. I don't want to do it. It sucks. It's time consuming. It costs money. There's so many reasons not to make a change that if you're just doing it because of one benefit you get from it, you're going to stop doing it. It's just that's the long and short of it. If I build a business, I'll be rich. Okay, but that's hard. It takes time. It takes money. It's time. It's like, there's a million reasons not to do it. If it were that easy, you would have already done it. So when you're thinking of why to do something, you need to have so many reasons to do it that it would be stupid for you not to do. Like when you have to know that like this thing gives me so much back that for me to not do this, I would just be an idiot, right? For me to not go to the gym, when I get so much out of it, I would be ludicrous. It would be insane for me to not go. For me to not work on this business when not only do I get money.
I can do this.
Right. And not only do I get money, but I also feel better. I learn how to handle challenges better. I become a better role model for my kids. My wife looks up to me more. I become someone in my community. I am able to better time manage. Like I just keep stacking the wins from the one input so that it's not just I'm getting one thing out of this, it's I'm getting 100 things out of this. And that's something that I'm going to want to do consistently, even when it's hard, right? Even if it's hard, but I get 100 things out of working on my business, I can motivate myself to do that because it feels like something that's worth doing. So that's exponential returns for the same input. And then the last thing in this framework, easier, EASIER, R stands for repeatable. Can you do this over and over and over and over again? Most importantly, not just until you get the result.
This we say is it scalable?
Right. Is it scalable? But again, beyond once you've reached the end line, right? So you're running a marathon but like that's why the marathon analogy fizzles out because you finish the marathon and it's over. Life doesn't end. So here, when you're done with the goal, when you've lost the weight, when you've gotten the money, when you've gotten your relationship back on track, right? So can you keep doing it? Is the habit, because we're talking about habits, we're talking about a change, is the change repeatable past when you get the result? right? This goes back to the enthusiasm in the beginning. So if you're saying, I can do this diet until I lose 20 pounds, it's like, okay, well, what happens after you lose 20 pounds?
After you lose 20
right,
pounds,
you're going to go back.
That?
Right, you're going to go back to what you were doing before. And when you go back to what you were doing before, you're going to go back to what you had before. When you've made the business, when you've got whatever the thing is, when you get the result, will you keep doing the thing that got you there after that? And if you can say yes to that, that's a habit that you will keep up forever and that you will keep seeing compound interest from for the rest of your life.
Isn't that how successful people do that? Like they keep doing the things that work for them.
Right.
And if they saying, if it works, don't change it. Just keep doing that. Keep doing that. You're absolutely right.
But again, so this is why I do all of this before we start, right? I take people through this whole framework and say, because if you say no to any of these things, right? If it's not repeatable, then like, let's find a better goal. I think that's where people mess up. They set goals that don't adhere to these frameworks. They're not enthusiastic about it. They don't have the resources available. It's not repeatable. And because of that, they work on it for 6 months, a year, however long, and eventually something breaks and they go, well, screw this, I can't do it anymore. And that's how they end up falling off. Whereas if you start it from the beginning with the right mindset, understanding all of these pieces that I've laid out, you know that this is not a 6-week or 6-month thing. This is a lifetime thing. And that's a habit that we really can instill and hold forever.
So much information, man. So much, Paul. I love it. So much information. Your energy, I love it, man. Bravo, bravo. Like this is the core of, I think, how we can get better in this life. Is to start with ourselves. It's to start within. How we can change in a better way and keep doing it and repeat it, and overall it becomes a habit. Is a good habit. To create any habits is not easy. Mm-hmm. But as you said, if you have a framework, which is you do, and we can just go through that, everything's going to be okay. Life would be good. The Instagram is the only way people can get a hold of you?
Yeah, so Instagram is the most, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, wherever. It's just my name on all social media platforms, but also the podcast. That's where I would love for people to come check out. And I have so much free resources, hundreds and hundreds of hours of helping people create positive change in their life on Change Made Easy. And yeah, if you want to talk to me directly, DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook, and I'd love to chat.
I can tell you, for those of you who are watching or listening, this show is all about education, learn, and the most important thing, learn and implement. You have to start doing it. Without doing, nothing is going to happen. And I love what you said. Do with what you have. That's important. Do what you have. Yeah, I can dream of building a castle. I don't have it, but I can really have a 2-bedroom apartment. Let's do that. Build that. But Paul, thank you so much, buddy. Thank you for being here. I learned so much. And I know you're moving from Austin. We're going to miss you, man. We're going to miss you. You're going to go to New York. You're going to go back to your neighborhood. But you planning to visit Austin again or no?
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Juan. And yeah, definitely. I mean, I love Austin. I love the community here. I love what you're doing here. This space is beautiful. So I'm definitely going to be back to visit.
But you're not going to miss the heat.
Yeah. Definitely not.
So you live in the right time. Yeah. In June, July, it's going to be tough. But thank you so much, Paul. Thanks for being here, buddy.
Yeah, thank you for having me.